Good afternoon and welcome to Book Sandwiched In. My name is Rebecca.Fuss. I'm with the Friends and Foundation of the Rochester Public Library. Welcome you today and also welcome our remote audience who may be watching on Twitter. And before we get started, I want to point out to you a new project that you'll see on the table in the back. It's our one-word project, and we're asking you either today or the next couple of Tuesdays to share one word that describes what the library means to you. And local artist Sean Dunwoody is going to be creating a mural on the outside of the Bausch and Lomb garden wall. And he would like to collect these words to incorporate as part of his mural. So please be a part of that and maybe your word will be chosen. So on this New York State primary day, and in honor of Book Sandwiched In's 60th anniversary, our pop-up review takes us back to September 13th, 1960, when John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon were running for president. And it was a twofer that day. The first book reviewed was John Kennedy, A Political Profile by James McGregor Burns, who 2 years earlier had won the Pulitzer Prize for his biography of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Burns ran unsuccessfully for Congress in 1958 and had become friends with JFK on the campaign trail. The local reviewer of the Kennedy book was Dr. Richard C. Wade, from the U of R and Harvard alumnus and U of R Associate Professor of History and Assistant Football Coach. The second book was Richard Nixon, A Political and Personal Portrait by political journalist Earl Mazo. In his career, Mazo had traveled with Nixon in Africa, Europe, and South America, and had interviewed him extensively. The Nixon reviewer was attorney Thomas Laverne. Recognize the name? He must have been campaigning for himself at the time of the review because he later was a member of the New York State Senate from 1961 to 1972. So to put this in context, this review was held 13 days before the September 26, 1960 Nixon-Kennedy presidential debate, the first televised presidential debate in U.S. history. Can you imagine the excitement in the room? How was the audience to know that television would become such an essential ingredient in the democratic process? And how excellent that the Friends of the Library provided timely and innovative programming, as the Friends and Foundation continues to do today. So we thank you for your past and current support to make such programs possible. So today, Becoming Nicole, and the reviewer today is Pamela Barres, and we have a co-reviewer, Bray Adams. I will introduce Pam, and then she will introduce Bray. So Pam is an LGBT rights activist, a member of the board of directors of the Empire State Pride Agenda, and previously on its executive committee. She has also served as president of the board of Rainbow Sage of the Genesee Valley, board member and executive director of Gay Alliance of the Genesee Valley, leader of the Rochester Transgender group, and on the board of the Lambda Network at Kodak. Pam is retired from Eastman Kodak Company, where she had a 29-year career, the last 13 years of which were in the field of human resources, both domestic and international. She holds a bachelor's degree in history from Brockport. Welcome, Pam Barres, to the podium today.
Thank you, Rebecca, for that very nice introduction. Let me just start off by saying it certainly is a pleasure and an honor to take part in this program. It's really a neat thing, 60 years. I can remember back 60 years, and a lot of you are my demographic in the room, so that makes me feel even more comfortable. I'm a former lots of things, and that's because I'm old. I am 73. And when I started reading the book, and we don't have a lot of time, so we're going to jump right into this. But when I started reading the book, I thought, wow, no one was thinking that back in the 1940s. I was born in 1942. This wasn't on people's radars in the 40s and in the 50s. So I had a little bit of trouble relating to some of it because as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a little girl. I always wanted to have the little party dresses, little starch party dresses, and wear the black patent leather shoes to all the parties and stuff that I went to as a child. But I was told that I could not do that because I was a little boy, and little boys don't dress that way. And back in those days, I didn't have anybody that was going to help me move along the way that I thought I should be moving along. And so, frankly, I got with the program, and I learned to act, and I learned to play the role of a little boy, and then I learned to play the role of a man. And I did reasonably well at it. But the feeling of I woman, I female never ever went away from me. And I basically built a shell around me so no one would know my secret, because I was convinced that if anyone ever found out my secret, that I would lose, no one would love me anymore, I would lose everything that I had. And that feeling stayed with me for many, many years. And finally, because of the death of a cousin who was the same age as me in my mid-40s, I decided to start investigating to find out what I could do, because I knew at that time that there was something maybe I could do about it. But I, in some respects, wish I would have been born when Nicole was born, and yet if that would have happened, that's just not really relevant, because I wouldn't have my two daughters, I wouldn't have my lovely wife, who I've been married to for almost 52 years, and so you can't go back. But it is certainly interesting to think about what your life would be, how different it probably would have been. One never knows. So, I thought the best way to handle this topic today would be to have questions from the audience. But how many of you have read the book? Not a whole lot. That's too bad. I highly recommend the book. If you're interested in knowing something about transgender, this is a book you should read. It is about a set of identical twins, one of which has known from a very early age that she was not the boy that everyone said she was, but she was really a young woman. And going back into when she was 2, when she was 3, she insisted she was a girl. And these were identical twins. You will learn a lot about what transgender is all about. And right now, this is very topical, because as you may have heard on the news, the state of North Carolina has declared war on the LGBT community, particularly the transgender part of the LGBT community, stating that you can only go to the bathroom that the sex of which you were born. So it has. If your birth certificate said you were a male, then you always have to go to the men's room. No matter what you feel like inside, no matter what you've done, you will always have to go to that bathroom. The state of Tennessee was going to pass a similar law, but they just rescinded it, I heard yesterday, which is amazing. Mississippi did pass the same law. And of course, Georgia was going to pass the law and did pass it, but the governor vetoed it. So this is the topic that's very much in the news. And if you want to know more about transgender, and I suspect you do or you wouldn't be here, you'll need to ask us some questions. I don't care if you're worried about you don't have the right vocabulary. I don't know exactly how to word it. You do the best you can and ask the questions, and myself and my co-presenter, Bray Adams, will do our best to answer your questions. Now, why did I choose Bray to talk with me? As I said, I couldn't relate to this because my experiences were so different. I did not have a mother bear looking out for me and making sure that nothing bad happened to me. And that's really what the mother in this book was. Kelly Maines, and the last name of the family was Maines, and they sued the state of Maine, which is interesting. Kelly Maines was really a mother bear, and she was going to let nothing happen to her cubs. And these twin boys were her cubs. Even though they were adopted, she was not able to have natural children. I guess the children are natural, she just didn't have them. And so she protected those children like a mother bear. And Bray Adams is the mother of a transgender child, only the child is now grown up and is a very nice young man. But she is also a mother bear, only she has enlarged her bear den to include not only her family, but to also include other transgender youth and gender variant and gender nonconforming youth in the Rochester area. Bray is also the minister at Open Arms Metropolitan Community Church on East Main Street across from the Delta Sonic, and she is also a student at the Rochester Colgate Divinity School, so she's a very busy person, and she's a reverend in training, I guess you would say. So I'm going to bring up that reverend in training now, and she'll tell you a little bit about herself.
Good afternoon. Can you see me? So my journey is very similar. My journey isn't my journey. My journey is my family's journey. And it is very similar. You know what? I can't see everybody.
Stand up. Oh.
Who thinks Pam should go to timeout? All right. Okay. Can you hear me now? So my journey is very similar to the one that the Maines family went through. My son, when he was about 2 years old, loved to play with his best friend, who was a boy named Will, and he loved to dress up like Peter Pan, not Wendy, like Superman, not Supergirl, like Spider-Man, but never, I don't guess they have a girl in the Spider-Man series, but he always wanted to be the boy. And one Halloween, he dressed up as Superman, and I said, "Oh, look, Supergirl." And he looks at me like, "Are you nuts?" He goes, "No, Mommy, I'm not Superman. I'm not Supergirl, I Superman. I Superman, not Supergirl." So he was about 2, maybe 3 at that time. I said, "Okie dokie," and moved on. He sort of got with the program, as Pam said. Eventually, he wore the dresses that I put on him, God bless him. And he has 2 younger siblings who are both girls, so I took the cute little everybody wearing the same dress pictures and all of that. And when he hit puberty at about 14, the train came off the rails. And my son went from a pretty happy, smiley kind of person to hiding literally under our dining room table. He left school. We had to do homebound tutoring. He really was unwell, and none of us knew what the problem was. With the help of a beautiful and amazing therapist, they had many, many conversations, and it finally was revealed that my child was really a boy. My husband is very similar to Wayne Maines. In fact, there was one part of the book that I'm reading, Wayne's reaction to his child, and I realized that I had tears flowing down my face, and I wasn't sobbing. It was so familiar. It was my life. Because my husband, no matter how much he loved our child, couldn't get it. He didn't understand. He's from southern Louisiana. He never met anyone who was gay, much less in any other part of the rainbow spectrum. So he's very similar to Wayne, and he's similar to Wayne in another way as well. When it looked like our child was not going to get the services that our child needed, that's when Papa Bear jumped into action. And when you read this story, you will see that that's exactly what happened with Wayne Maines. He was content to let Mom do it until it became clear that Mom couldn't do it on her own. So where's my son today? Thomas came out and is completely living his life as the boy he always was. He's 19. He took a semester off of school this year to repair typewriters. I don't know, but that's what he likes to do. So he's repairing manual typewriters. He has a part-time job. He lives on his own, drives his own car, takes care of himself, and gives himself his own hormone injections every week, which is what's necessary for him to feel comfortable in his transition. He has had a legal name change. We don't use his old name at all. And one of the things that I think is really hard for me to read in the book is the lack of acceptance that took place in this small town in Maine for Nicole Maines. And we really have been very fortunate in that within our inner circle of people, we live here in Rochester, and our friends in Rochester all just kind of went, know. One little girl explained, I know a girl that went into the boys' bathroom and came out a boy. But you know, she was 4 or 5 at the time. But we've not had any of that kind of discrimination of any sort. Our family in Louisiana totally didn't get it, but they loved the child. And it didn't matter if they got it, because they loved our kid. And just recently, my son got a birthday card from his grandparents who are in their late 80s, and it was written to Thomas. So they get it. So anyway, that's my story. The only other thing I would say is that I am the pastor at Open Arms Metropolitan Community Church. I always said I was going to buy a church and paint it rainbow, and I didn't have to because there already was one. So if anybody ever needs to find out about that, let me know.
I just turned on something on the screen. Can you still hear me? Okay. Since no one has read the book, and I don't know what you know about transgender, let's do a little quick 101. When we're talking about sex and gender, we're not talking about just one thing. Most of us just think every day it's this or that, man or woman. In fact, it's a lot of different things. You can think of many of this stuff as a continuum. Male on this end, stereotypically, women stereotypically on that end. Okay, so all males are going to have penises, all females are going to have vaginas, and of course anyone with a penis is going to identify as a man, anyone with a vagina is going to identify as a woman. They're going to express their masculinity or their femininity, and of course they're going to be attracted to women or attracted to men. That's all very nice and good, except that's not the way it really works. There are often people that are born with indeterminate genitalia. Okay, those people are called intersex. Okay, it's probably 1 out of every 100 or 2 out of every 100 births are probably intersex to some degree. How many people actually know if they're X or XY, XX or XY as far as their chromosomes? Most people don't know that. We just assume that all women are XY and all XX, excuse me, and all men are XY. But there's like 37 different possibilities, and many people are not what you may think they would be. Just because you have a particular form of genitalia doesn't mean that is who you are. And one of the things, if you read this book, you will learn exactly how today medical science believes this type of thing happens. And what it's called is gender dysphoria. Okay, born with and identified at birth as a man, but I always knew, as I said earlier, it was always I woman. I felt that I was a woman. Okay, now how did I express my gender? Well, for lots of years, I expressed my gender as a man. I tried to express my gender masculine, just like Thomas tried to express his gender feminine, because that's what his mother wanted him to do. All right, but he knew all along that that's not right for him. That his identity was really male, and my identity, I always felt, was female. What happened with his family, and okay, now the other thing that's really important is transgender, which is really what this area up here is, gender identity, has nothing to do with sexual orientation. Those are different concepts.
Say it again. Say it again.
Okay, say it again. Okay. Transgender, your gender identity has nothing to do with your sexual orientation. I'm attracted to women, though I know myself to be I know I'm a woman, but I'm attracted to women, even though I was born and lived most of my life, half my life, as a man. Okay? So people make that mistake all the time. I must be gay. No, I'm not gay. Well, depends how you look at it. I guess I am gay. I like other women. Okay? It's confusing. Now, we've talked long enough. We're going to come down here where you are, and who's going to ask me the first question, or ask Ray the first question? Gentleman in the back.
There's a terminology, some people identify as cisgender.
Yes.
Is that similar to intersex, or?
No.
You're cisgender, probably.
The question was, what is cisgender? Cisgender is a more modern term that's used to Yeah, it's a cisgender. That was good. I handed the mic away and continued to talk. We practiced this, you can tell. Cisgender is a term that refers to people that have no questions about their gender. They were born male, they identify as male. Okay? One gender, same gender, that's what cisgender means. Born a woman, identify as a woman. I look at myself as transgender, born a man, identify as a woman. Okay?
And it gets tricky because there's some other terms that are sometimes seen and heard in the community. You may hear the term gender fluid. This is a person who maybe identifies more on the masculine side on one day and more on the feminine side on another day. Or gender queer, which they are sometimes one and sometimes the other. There's a lot of other terminology that goes. In the back, there's a trans glossary for anyone who's interested, because it does have some of those terms. But that's a great question. Yes, ma'am.
Will the state of New York change gender on a birth certificate, and under what conditions?
Okay, so our child was born. She asked, will the state of New York change the gender on your birth certificate and other important items? New York will. Unfortunately, my son was born in North Carolina. Yay. So we have, with his legal name change, he has changed his driver's license, his social security card, and his passport. If he wants to show proof of having had surgical intervention, then he could choose to go to North Carolina and petition the court to change his birth certificate. It varies from state to state. Some states don't allow it at all.
In the state of New York, it used to be you had to show surgical notes from an operation to get your birth certificate changed. That's no longer the case. A letter from a physician stating that you are the gender that you say you are is all is necessary now to change the birth certificate in the state of New York. Did that answer your question, I hope? Yes, ma'am.
So what's the outcome in the book of the person who's the main person?
Okay, well, someone just said, well, read the book. So I highly recommend you do that. But to give you the thumbnail answer to that is the child was able to start, their parents raised this little girl as a little girl, and she continued to live as a little girl, knew she was a little girl, and wanted to go to the little girl's restroom, which is what all the little girls did. The school at the 5th grade level started having problems, not because other little girls had a problem with it, but because a grandfather of one of the boy children had a problem with it. And they then made sure that she would go only to the restroom in the staff area, the teacher's lounge, which the little girl initially didn't think that was such a bad idea, except her parents thought, hey, she's been singled out and treated differently. And they ended up suing the state of New York, or excuse me, the state of Maine. Now, the other thing that happened here, and is something that couldn't have happened a number of years ago, is they delayed puberty. There are doctors now, pediatric doctors, that will work with the child and work with the parents, and they only do this after they are sure that this is really what the child wants, and the parents have to have some agreement with it, I guess.
Yeah, I can say some more about that.
Yeah, and they started giving this child at age 13, I believe it was, no, earlier than that, 12, I think, blockers to suppress the male hormones. So, because there's nothing, if you think about it, if you're a little girl and suddenly you're going through puberty, and your voice starts to get deeper, and you start to develop your secondary sexual, Jesus, I can't talk. Your secondary sexual characteristics start forming. You start growing a beard. This is not what a little girl would ever want. All right, or the same thing with a little boy suddenly developing breasts, starting to have a period. Not what they would want. So what is happening today, and what did not happen when I was younger, is that they can stop puberty and block it. And then as you get closer to the age of what's consent, is they'll start giving you male or female hormones, depending on the case. And that's what happened with Nicole. First of all, they changed the name from Wyatt to Nicole, and then she had blockers. Then she started taking female hormones, and when she turned 18, which was in 2015, she had sex reassignment surgery to change the genitalia. So that's what happened to her. She's now in college, to the best of my knowledge. Bray is Facebook friends with the father, so you may have more current information. They won the lawsuit, and the state of Maine now has to treat transgendered youth the way transgendered youth needs to be treated. Little boys can go to the little boys' room, little girls can go to the little girls' room. And one of the words they use in one of the guidelines is the word consistently. The concept that a lot of people that are enemies of this thing say, oh, well, that means that today if I feel like a girl, I can go to the girls' restroom, and then I can just wander in and out. And we can't have men in the women's restrooms. We're not talking about men in the women's restrooms or talking about women in the men's restrooms. We're talking about people that know themselves to be that gender, and that's the restroom they go to. And consistently. It's not if you suddenly decide that you're transgender, the first thing you're not going to be able to do is walk into the restroom opposite of the restroom you've always been walking into. But you consistently have to be presenting yourself in that way. And that's really what we're talking about.
So the three characteristics that you look for in a child is that they would be consistent, insistent, and persistent about their anatomy not matching with their identity. And that's really important because, for example, I kicked myself for, why didn't I know that when Thomas was 2? Well, you know why I didn't know that? Because Thomas then wore a dress. Because Thomas was a boy who was a girl who liked bulldozers. It was fine. And we really didn't have the insistence and the consistency at that age. Now, when Thomas was 14, it was very clear who he was. And we went to an endocrinologist here in town. You guys should know that Rochester is amazing. We have what's called gender health services at Strong Hospital. There is a growing department there that handles almost all the adolescents that I know. I run an adult family of trans youth organization, and almost all the kids go to this one place. They immediately started him on hormone blockers. It was a little late. He'd already experienced some of the female puberty that was unavoidable, but he did start on the blockers, which prevented a lot more of it. And then he started on testosterone at the age of 16. So that's sort of the process. And one of the things you would know about trans etiquette is you would never ask anyone, obviously, if they've had surgery. And that's another problem with the bill, right? You're going to really stand there with a mirror up my skirt or whatever it is. So that's an issue as well.
I have so many questions. I don't know where to
Well, start with the first one.
Well, an observation. One of my grandsons is a freshman in college, in a small college, and there is a person at his corner who identifies as neither. Yes. All the restrooms have been open to everybody. They don't. But they're kind of the other fellow and sister students don't know quite how to connect. It's so ambiguous.
Well, the first thing to do is ask someone what pronoun do you use? If you see someone and you are being introduced to them, for example, when I introduce myself on Sunday services, I stand up and I say, my name is Bray Adams, and I use she, her, and hers pronouns. And there are I think 96 or something different ways of coming up with pronouns. They get confusing, so it's okay to ask someone, conjugate that, please. But often a person who doesn't identify as either gender would use the pronoun they, which grammar experts are all over, but you would say they went to the store today. and you mean a singular person. But that's a part of respect, using someone's pronouns that they use for themselves.
This idea of not identifying as either or both or whatever it might be is relatively new, and it's difficult for some of us that are older to fully get our arms around. I kind of feel you have to pick a team someplace along the line, but maybe not. But I think when people get out, I think it's college, this is going to work fine. I think when people start looking for a job, however, this may become more problematic, and it's a relatively new phenomenon, and it'll be interesting to see where we go with this. But what we have up here is a masculine, feminine. Those are all spectrums. You can be any part on those. You can be at any place on those gradations. So yeah, maybe we're all a little bit different. That's all part of just being an individual. The one thing I am tired about is talking about bathrooms. Being transgendered is really not where I pee. To be perfectly candid with you, that is the smallest part of being transgendered. And bathrooms are socially controlled. There's no law in the state of New York that says you can't go into any bathroom you want, except it's socially, you go where you belong, where you're supposed to go. And one of the problems people that don't identify as any gender have is what bathrooms do they go to. And so they like the gender-neutral bathrooms, unisex bathrooms, whatever they're being called, family bathrooms. And that does solve a lot of problems in that respect. But my gender is so much more than where I go to the bathroom, as is everyone else's. And we need to get off of this kick that these are all predators going into the room and are going to attack people. There have been no incidences of transgendered people attacking anyone in a bathroom in New York State. At least there wasn't a couple of years ago or a year ago when we ran the search. And I was almost surprised by that, because you think statistically there must be one crazy person out there, but and we've done this across the nation. We haven't found any cases of trans people attacking people, and yet that's really what the right wing, which is the people that are pretty much against this, are saying. Oh, people are going to be attacked in the bathrooms. Save your 11-year-old daughter or your wife from being attacked from a crazy trans person. Ain't going to happen, folks. Hasn't happened yet.
Actually, there have been 3 members of Congress who have been arrested for misconduct in bathrooms. But in the United States, there have been no transgender people that have been published that have had misconduct in the bathrooms. Just in case. Well, no, but look who points fingers. Look who's pointing fingers. Yes, ma'am.
I don't think it's the concern of transgender people going in because of the problem in the bathroom, but someone who might use that as an opportunity to go in.
You know, that's a great point, and it is something that we worry about. When my son first transitioned, he looked a little more feminine than maybe some of the other fellows in the bathroom, and we had to give him really careful guidelines about safety. If a bunch of guys come in and they're all joshing around, you might want to watch what you're doing, that sort of thing. But to put him in the girls' room would have been inappropriate as well.
The other thing is if I understand your question properly, it's not the fact that you're concerned that trans people might do something in the bathroom, but if trans people are allowed to go into the bathroom, that means that any other person could go into the bathroom. And that's really not the case. That could happen today. There's no law to prevent you from going to the men's room or from the man behind you from going to the ladies' room. And if you do go into those rooms and you do anything untoward, whatever that might be, there are laws that you will be arrested for. We don't need another bathroom law. Bathrooms have been working fine for, hundreds of years. I don't know if they've been working fine, depends how you flush, but let us say that bathrooms are the concept of men and women's rooms has worked fine. It's been socially monitored, and we've not had a lot of problems. It's not going to be a lot of problems. It's the first thing you cannot use that argument to say, well, now I feel like a woman, so I went into the women's room. And fine. So what are you going to do in there? You're going to go into the stall and close the stall. Now, if you do anything else, you're going to get arrested. And that's the way it should be. And it works the same way in the other room as well. Next question, someone. Oh, I have no desire. Yeah, I mean, when I drove through North Carolina, I went to the women's room where I've gone when I go through North Carolina for years. I didn't spend any money in North Carolina, if I didn't say that, though. Yeah, I'd be a little concerned going into some men's rooms. No question about it. I wouldn't. I've also never seen any nudity in the ladies' room. But, hey.
Well, and I want to ask the gentleman in the room, if Pam walked into your restroom, how would you feel? That would be surprising, right? So saying.
I'll tell you this one quick story. Obviously, I started doing this at a late age, and I couldn't decide at one point should I go to the men's room, the ladies' room. I was flying to a conference, actually a transgender conference in Atlanta, and I had to go through Chicago. And so I'm in the line for the men's room, and I thought I was at this stage where I wasn't quite sure how people would take me, but I thought, okay, I'd better go to the men's room. So in the line, there was a line to go into the men's room, which was unusual, but anyway, all of a sudden, this guy opens the door and says, "After you, ma'am." And I thought, okay, I think I can change from now.
Yes. This gentleman hasn't asked anything yet.
How does the United States compare, say, to the rest of the world, specifically Europe?
Well, I can speak about children in that area. There have been studies. Oh, his question was, how does the United States compare to other places in the country? I can speak to children, and then Pam, you could speak to adults. What has happened in a lot of countries is when a child makes clear their gender identity, if they start treatment right away to do the blockers at the onset of the opposite gender puberty, and at the appropriate time start hormones for the appropriate gender, there has been no difference in the children's development. Now, what you have to know is that's really, and there's no difference in the suicide rate, and you need to know that really importantly, because the suicide rate among transgender people in the United States right now is 41%. 41% is the general number. Now, what we don't know is we don't know how many people committed suicide and their families regendered them to what they were comfortable with before they were buried. So we don't know that number in total. But that's what the estimates are right now by the CDC, 41%. In the average population, it's 1.25%. So what we know is if we treat these children at the age where it is appropriate to treat them, those children have an equal amount of mental illness and suicide rate and all of the other things to their non-trans peers.
Was there anything about the book that seemed to you that you would criticize or think seemed inauthentic? Any negatives about the book?
There's a couple. Yeah, the book is really, really, very, very good. I was kidding with Bray earlier. They claim that Wyatt at age 2 said to his father, "Daddy, I hate my penis." I question whether a kid at age 2 would have actually said that. It would be, I think, very precocious. So that's a very small, picky point. The book is very good. You will learn a lot about transgender. If you read the book, you'll learn a lot. You can learn a lot about the medical reasons for that to happen. I mean, the thing that was amazing here is these are 2 identical twin boys, and yet one of them is very happily a boy, and the other one is known since age 2 that she is a girl. How can this happen with twins? And this was a question, and they explain in the book just how the hormone baths and stuff like that maybe make these changes, because what they've learned is that the body is differentiated earlier, the brain is differentiated later. And depending on, and this is probably, I mean, the mother might have had a cold and something caused the stress and the hormone levels to go up and down, and how much of this bath she got is as opposed to another one, because the babies are all in their own little sacks, so they have their own little environment. It is possible that it happens differently. And then she talks about the lizards having different chromosomes. You can learn a lot, or you can skip over some parts of this if you wish.
Well, and what I would say is the experience of the Maines family is having lived that exact same experience in almost real time. My child is the exact age of Nicole. Their experience is very similar to what we experienced medically. Their experience is very similar to what they experienced in their family life. We were fortunate that we didn't have to move because our school district accepted our child immediately. But there are, this is a true to life book.
So I suspect the book is in the library. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. We're also going to do a drawing for the book. Take one more question.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
How was your experience at Kodak, your professional experience?
Once I came out, my experience was very good. But I never fully transitioned at Kodak. Though I did go to parties and stuff like that, and I never win any raffles. And I won a raffle at one of the Christmas parties I went to as Pamela. And so then I had to go tipping up in my high heels in front of everyone, and the vice president in charge of HR gave me a hug when he gave me whatever it was that I won. So it was my experience was good at Kodak. Kodak, I was in a position, being in human resources, that I was able to have some impact on how it went after that. And my assistant worked with lots of other transgendered people after I took an early retirement. And because I could take an early retirement, I did. And because my wife and I both worked at Kodak office, one of the compromises that we made was because I wanted to stay married and so did she, and we both love each other, was it wouldn't be fair to her if I would transition at Kodak, because I'll tell you, people do talk about this, and she didn't need to have that to deal with. It was bad enough that I had to deal with it, I guess. Okay, Rebecca. Me? I left Kodak in 98, February of 98. So I was one of the early retirement type stuff. I worked at Kodak office most of my career, and I traveled internationally for Kodak in HR and marketing.
Well, Pam and Bray, thank you so much for sharing your lives and your stories with us today.